Live pictures of the White House. Still have not heard from President Biden, his team, or his Department of Justice about a raid on former President Trump's office down in Mar-a-Lago. It says raid was focused on 15 boxes from White House that Trump allegedly took to Mar-a-Lago when he left the presidency. Reportedly, President Trump was not at Mar-a-Lago when the FBI agents raided it. He did put out a statement saying that they broke his safe, among other things. Bring in Kevin Carroll, national security attorney who's been involved in a lot of these cases. Obviously, Kevin, the one thing that everybody instantly said when they heard FBI search was, where is the search warrant? First things first, is there any chance there wasn't a search warrant, that the FBI just went to go retrieve these boxes? Or does there have to be some document that we might be able to see?
I'm sure there's a search warrant. I'm almost certain that it's still under seal. The FBI could only, break into a place to try to seize something in a case of exigent circumstances where somebody was about to be killed. And this is not that. So it's certain that a very high-level official of the Justice Department, almost certainly the Attorney General, signed off on a U.S. Attorney's Office going to a U.S. magistrate judge and saying that they had probable cause that a crime had been committed and that they could describe with particularity the information they were looking for, the items they were looking for, and where they were located. And a federal magistrate judge found that that was the case, signed the warrant, and the FBI executed it.
At times like this, an hour into breaking news that the FBI, in the words of President Trump, raided his office at Mar-a-Lago, I'm just sort of going through the possibilities here. You have to leave, there's perhaps middle ground, right? That the FBI was sent to go retrieve this classified information. President Trump knew that they were going at this time. He agreed to hand it over and is now making a huge deal out of something that isn't quite what it seems. Possible?
It's possible. I'd be surprised. If that was the case, that he was able to turn it over, certainly his lawyers could turn it over. If the information was so classified that his lawyers didn't have the clearance to handle it, his Secret Service detail, could have handed it over. They have the clearances. So while it's possible that people are making a mountain out of a molehill here, I think it probably is a serious development legally for the former president.
He was very quick in his statement to immediately bring up Hillary Clinton's 33,000 emails on her server, many of which contain classified information, which she then tried to destroy. It leads you to believe that at least he's trying to create the whataboutism defense here. Not that that's ever a good defense. We learned it in kindergarten, but does he have a point?
He does. And as you said, it's legally relevant. If you tell the state trooper that everybody else was speeding too, it's not going to cut any ice. But he's right that Hillary Clinton was investigated for violating possibly 18 U.S.C. 793, which is a felony charge of grossly mishandling classified information, and 1924, 18 U.S.C. 1924, which is a misdemeanor charge of mishandling classified information through less than gross negligence. And it's surprising to me the way that the case was resolved with Secretary Clinton back in the day. Certainly, many service members have been prosecuted and served hard time for doing far less than Hillary Clinton did with her mishandling of classified information.
Playing that out, though, if you're President Trump and you're trying to create this defense, at some point you say, wait a second, how do you charge me or do anything to me when you didn't do anything to Hillary Clinton, arguably somebody of equal national standing, for taking classified documents or handling them in a way that you shouldn't?
It's a great argument to make politically. It's not a valid argument to make legally. And I doubt a judge would even allow you to present it to a jury as such, because everybody else is doing it. Like you said, in kindergarten, it's not going to work with the teacher, and it doesn't work before a federal judge either.
How worried should we be that the complete loss of trust in the FBI by even Trump's skeptical Republicans is reaching an irreparable point? If you're at the point where you're going to raid the former president's office for 15 boxes of documents, that the sole issue here is retention of classified information that are in a safe behind walls guarded by the Secret Service. Is there not supposed to be a discretion argument made by somebody like Merrick Garland, or a discretion decision of, do we really want to go down this route of raiding a former president's office over something that, at least on its face, it doesn't really mean that much, if this is what it's about?
Certainly, the Attorney General of the United States has the discretion at a policy level to decide which kind of statutes he wants to emphasize, and in an individual case, right? And any prosecutor can say that the interests of justice aren't served by pursuing a particular matter in a particular fashion. I have more confidence in the FBI than perhaps some others do. I know that the Bureau has made missteps over the past several years, very public missteps, but I still think most of the men and women that serve there and in the Justice Department are trying to do the right thing.
Yeah, look, you can't impeach an entire organization, but I'm just thinking in terms of a credibility issue, how much that goes into it, of looking at what's happened to the FBI. You've got the Hunter Biden investigation. You had the so-called Russian collusion investigation. You got President Trump now. I stood up to America's bureaucratic corruption. I restored power to the people and truly delivered for our country like we have never seen before. You're not a political expert, but just from a political standpoint, as much as I enjoy talking politics with you, this gives President Trump an enormous opening to once again become the aggrieved man.
It does, and it's destructive for the country. Unfortunately, I think we have to see whether or not, because of course, an indictment is only the government side of the story, much less a search warrant, which is less than that. We'll have to see what the president's defense is. Yeah. But if he has mishandled classified information, I would hope he doesn't do damage to Americans' trust in their institutions, because at the end of the day, we need a Justice Department, we need an FBI.
Yeah, no, you need both. A real quick timeline. How long can the Justice Department keep this under seal? As long as they want?
Not too long, I think. If we were talking about some complex conspiracy investigation and an ongoing investigation, you could see an argument for keeping the search warrant sealed for a long time. Here, the elements of the crime are really, was there classified information outside an appropriate container that they've either recovered it today, properly stored or not. It's a fairly simple matter. If
that is really what this was entirely about, and again, we don't know, because we haven't heard from the Justice Department, we haven't heard from the FBI. Kevin Carroll with us. Kevin, thank you very much. I'm being told to stretch, which I guess that means that you and I get to stick around and keep talking here for a minute. How does this get planned? It's one thing for the FBI to go raid a towing business. Is this as easy as the FBI agents calling up their buddies in the Secret Service and saying, hey, fellows, we got this search warrant, let us in, and we need to go see the president's office?
And so, I would think this would be a call between the Attorney General and the Secretary of Homeland Security, who would then call down to the Director of the Secret Service, because the last thing the country needs is some sort of armed standoff between former President Trump's Secret Service detail and the agents out of the Miami FBI office. So you would want to wicker this together all the way from the cabinet level, down to the two special agents in charge and the squad supervisors and such that are going to be actually on the ground.
All right. So, Kevin, 15 boxes of classified data. Of classified documents. How do you make the argument that classified documents held in a safe in the former president's office, he maintains, as the former presidents maintain, full security clearance? They still get briefings of the most sensitive of our national security secrets. How do you make the case that those documents held in a safe at the president's compound, guarded 24 hours a day by the Secret Service, is somehow putting national security at risk?
Well, there's two legal problems related to that for the president. One, when he was the president, the information was his, so he could declassify it anytime for any reason that he wanted to, as he did in a couple cases, with, for example, some satellite photos of Iran. He's no longer the president, so he's not the original classification authority, so he can't decide what the classification is. And two, as far as the storage of top secret, special compartmented code word information, it's not enough to just say, well, it's real secure. There are these extraordinarily elaborate standards for what a SCIF is, a special compartmented information facility. and the kind of extremely heavy safes and the 24/7 monitoring and so forth that have to go into it. So it's not just a matter of, hey, I promise, I am storing the jewelry you asked me to hold on to safely. Just trust me. There's really specific regulations about it. And now that he's no longer president,
the rules are very different that you point out. Kevin, we're now going to actually say goodbye and turn it over to our friends at Prime. Kevin Carroll with us through an hour of breaking news on the raid, unprecedented raid of a former president's office by the FBI. We'll see you in a minute. Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you, Leland.
Thanks for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to subscribe. Click the red button to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.